We have been doing these videos for several months now, but I don't think we've addressed the elephant in the room. Specifically, this room. This is my living room, and I wanted to show you around my flat. So this is our living room. Out of the window, we've been watching the new Meadowbank Sports Centre being constructed. This is the kitchen, usually much less tidy than this, but we've managed to get it in shape for the video. And this is my study. Normally you only get to see the wall behind me in the bookcase, but this is the whole thing. Alas, it's a box room, so I don't have any windows. We even have that classic Edinburgh Flat feature, a clothes pulley. All of us have been spending a lot of time at home, and as a result I've become very familiar with my home, all the things I like about it, and all the things that frustrate me. It goes without saying that where you live is very important. It's where you spend most of your time, where you eat, sleep, spend time with family, and increasingly where we work. Our homes shelter us from the outside world, but they can also cut us off from others. For the next few weeks, our theme is going to be love. And this week we are looking at loving God and what we can learn about loving God from 1 John chapter 4. This chapter is one of the most densely packed in Scripture, talking about love from all different angles. But specifically, we're going to be focusing in on verse 16, which reads, God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. There's so much in this short verse. Firstly, the incredible statement, God is love. The Bible uses so many adjectives to describe God. God is powerful, God is merciful, God is wise, God is just. These help us describe God's qualities and attributes, but they don't define who God essentially is. God is powerful, but God isn't power. God is wise, but God isn't wisdom. But love is different. The Bible doesn't simply say that God is loving, it says that God is love. Love is at the heart of who God is. And we know this is true because of Jesus. For as Christians, Jesus is our ultimate image of God. And yet Jesus lacks so many of the qualities that we associate with God. We say God is almighty, and yet Jesus was weak. We say that God is great, yet Jesus was humble. God is invincible, but Jesus was vulnerable. In Jesus we see God stripped of everything, all power, glory, knowledge, all of that gone. And what's left? Love. Generous, self-giving love. Love that would endure even the cross for the sake of us. God's essential nature, God's truest nature, is love. So God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. I really like that term, abide. To abide is to live and rest somewhere, to make it your home. The old Scots term for an unmarried couple who lived together was bidie in. They weren't married, so what defined their relationship was the fact that they lived together, that they shared the same abide. We are called to abide in love, or in other words, to have love as our home, to live and rest in a place of love. Living in love means living with an awareness of God's love, His love for us and for all of creation, and allowing that awareness to shape and change us. When we make a home in love, we allow it to open our eyes to the value of every person, to the goodness and beauty of creation, and to our own self-worth. Now, it's important for us to realise that abiding in love isn't simply about what we do. More than our actions, living in love is a state of being. One of the challenges of lockdown is that we haven't been able to do many of the things that we normally like to do to show love for one another. Things like volunteering at a charity, visiting people in care homes, taking care of our colleagues, even just being able to give a hug to one another. These things we've had to stop in the interests of safety. Staying at home has meant that we have less opportunities to love one another in the ways that we're used to. And that has been really hard. But even when we can't do the things that we want, we can still abide in love. We can still allow God's love to open us up to seeing all this is good and worth protecting in the world. Abiding in love can and should prompt us to act. Jesus himself said in John 15, "I am the fruit and you are the branches. Abide in me and you will bear much fruit." But abiding has to come before action. And even when we are stuck at home, cut off from others, we can still rest in God's love and allow that to transform us. And it's when we're living in love that we encounter God. Because God is love, and so wherever we find love, we can find God. As it says in verse 7, everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Love is like a house. The building has already been built. God has already done all the hard work. Verse 10 tells us that long before we ever had a chance to love God, God loved us first. It's a house constructed and furnished by God to be a home for us. And the door is standing wide open. All we have to do is walk in. But we're so good at coming up with excuses why we shouldn't walk in that door. I'm not sure, I'm too busy. Do you know what? Living in a tent in the garden, maybe that's not so bad. We come up with all these excuses, but what we could do instead is just walk through that door and make that house our home. There's an old story in the church that St. John, who wrote this letter, outlived all the other apostles. He lived to a grand old age. He was so old that people had to carry him, lift him into church meetings. And when he was in those meetings, he would say only one thing, and he would say it over and over again: little children, love one another. The other believers started to get a bit frustrated because he kept saying the same thing, repeating himself over again. So they said to him, "Teacher, why do you always say that?" And John simply replied, "Because it is the Lord's commandment, and if it alone is kept, it is sufficient." So today, rather than any particular call to action, I want to encourage you to just take a moment to rest in God's love. Know that it is more than we could ever possibly imagine, and if we can reflect just a fraction of it, then that is enough.